Good morning, everyone. This is Frontier Opening Bell for today, Thursday, the 28th of January. I am Boston Amafaye. Thank you, my panelists this morning. Ali Kansachu, the CEO, founder, Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi. Thank you very much for coming through. And Tampula Shaju, analyst and also a team member at Frontier Africa Report. Thank you both. Let's run you through very quickly the equities market closing for the Pan-African space. 5 markets on a daily basis. Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Egypt were in a positive territory on Wednesday, but Kenya softened 0.32% on the day that the central bank decided to leave interest rates unchanged at 7%. South Africa went deeper, 1.78% in correlation with the global emerging markets on Wall Street and in Europe, where stocks softened on Wednesday across the board, across the divide, because again of the issue around the vaccine and the virus, and a bit of a resurgence of the dollar as well. So let's cross to the East African market, where the Njoroge's team at the central bank left interest rate unchanged. 7% says accommodative policy stance are still fine by now. And the central bank also says the total restructured loans by the Kenyan banks now at the top of 1.63 trillion shillings. A good news for Africa's post-COVID recovery. OPEC Development Fund and the Africa Finance Corporation signed $50 million loan. This is good news. But again, when you look at it, Kenya market players got exemption from digital tax, that's according to the Capital Market Authority and the Revenue Agency. And Tanzanian bottle maker Q gets 1.1 billion shillings IFC loan. That's good news. Ali.
Yes, good morning. Let me start with a slew of data that came out first thing this morning. Kenya's economy is now slumped into a recession, with a second consecutive quarter of contraction. The latest data says we shrank in the third quarter by just over 1%. That's following on from a reduction of about 5+% in the previous quarter. If you decompose the GDP, you'll see agriculture, which makes up a third of the economy, grew by 6.3% and was a standout performer. However, tourism, education, accommodation, food services were all very, very soft. The World Bank has been predicting that we're going to see 6.9% in 2021. And I think that's very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we'll probably be hopefully around 4 to 4.5%. But essentially, this confirms that we are in a recession, which is normally defined by 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. We also had 2 sets of results first thing in the morning, and the more important one was the bellwether electricity generating company, that's KenGen. They reported full year earnings, profit after tax was up a mouth-watering 133.1%. Basically, on that basis, the share price trades on a price earnings ratio of less than 2. If those folks at Reddit discovered this, I think we would go to the moon, but we know this might be off their radar. But strong results, revenue performance was up, profit before income tax was up 18%. There was a big tax benefit which beefed up the profit after tax, and the dividend was hiked 20%, which is something I think all investors would love to see. So I think these will be well received and we'll get a good performance out of that. As you said, central bank left rates unchanged at 7%. We've discussed this before in your program, and I think, you know, it's like pushing on a piece of string, and we've run out of string here, in my view, or we got a 50 basis points left, and I think they're going to, notwithstanding the recessionary data points, I think it's difficult for them to push more. 1.63 trillion shillings of bank loans which have been restructured speaks to the size of the problem. It's an enormous number. frankly, and this is something that banks will be hoping that we see a rebound and customers can recalibrate their businesses and get back on course. But basically, if it's a double whammy and the economy remains soft in 2021, we're going to have a very big problem in the banking sector, in my view. And your final story about Tanzania, that's positive, 1.1 billion shillings. It tells you that there is appetite for this kind of investment, and I think that's positive. The Tanzanian president, of course, has been very skeptical about the vaccines, and there's been this big debate in Tanzania about what the real status of the virus is. But that shows you that people can look through that noise, and if the investment's compelling, they'll make it.
Yes, I think the earnings season will help lift the Nairobi bulls as we see some of these numbers. KenGen will now keep an eye on Kenya Power and see what happens. KenGen is the power generator. Let's see what the retail, the downstream side of it with Kenya Power, which is also listed, will look like within the next days and weeks as well. Thank you, Ali. Let's switch to the West African market, where the Central Bank of Nigeria is still making headlines in terms of the markets. Yesterday, the NTB came in at about better by 0.500% for 91-day bill, 0.300% higher for the 164-day, and 364-day also came in higher at 2%, higher than the previous, the first auction that we had. And Union Bank has denied rumors that Atlas Mara of Bob Diamond's Atlas Mara is planning to sell 50% stake. That's also been denied by Atlas Mara, saying that there was no buyer yet. At least the Union Bank says there's no truth in the rumor that a local bank wants to take those shares off the Bob Diamond's financial company. And UBA says its board has agreed to the 2020 financials and a final dividend. Transcorp is today closing the market on the listing of that right offering, I think about 2.4 billion local naira. And Vodafone is considering options of selling its stake in Ghana and may sell that the majority stake to Vodacom. And the ECOWAS Brown Card has a new chairman, Nigerian-born Ganiyu Musa. Tempo, quickly, I'm sure when it's time for dividend and earnings, investors' ears are ticked, just as Ali said earlier. This is UBA, one of Nigerian banks, talking about final dividend for the year 2020, the year of the low cost, in the manner of speaking.
Well, it's interesting, and you're correct. I mean, a lot of investors tend to buy shares at this point for the dividend gains and all of that. If you compare that to what the NTBs and bonds are offering, I mean, the return on dividend is really more attractive, 10% in the region of between the 10 and 15%. So that's why folks will begin to go for equity, as we've been saying across the corporate and retail end of the market. UBA, yes, they gave out a notice yesterday saying that they've given approval at their meeting on the 20, I think it was on the 21st of this month, and now it's been forwarded to the central bank, because the central bank, given the regulation that they came on board with a few years ago, now have to look at the earnings of companies to be able to judge if they should pay dividends or not. You know, before now it wasn't like that. So they've said that they will give an update as to the final dividend and the approval of the central bank once the CBN gives a nod to all of that. For what is going on for Transcorp, of course, I mean, the rights issue getting listed today, that is something that will give a bit of exit and entry for more investors at the end of the day. That has taken place. We're going to look at how it will affect the share price of the company going forward. Union Bank, you mentioned, I mean, has denied the rumor of this is the second time that Union Bank is actually denying this rumor of a takeover. And if you look at the press statement that came from Atlas Mara actually said that yes, they're considering some strategies around whatever the plan is. I think the phrase is that the board of the company has been exploring a wide range of strategic options with the assistance of external advisors. Every time this comment is given by way of reaction to this rumor of a takeover of Union Bank, I mean, what we understand is that, okay, they're looking to sell something. And the major buying financial institution in Nigeria has always been Access Bank. They took over Diamond Bank successfully. That is why it is quite easy to actually finger Access Bank as the main figure looking to buy this particular company. Finally, I should say that what we're seeing around the Ganil Musa's appointment as the chairman of ECOWAS Brown Card scheme, insurance scheme, is also a very good one. Don't forget that Nigeria is actually the biggest in terms of ECOWAS bloc. They are also, Ganil Musa is also the chairman of the National Insurance Association in Nigeria. This scheme is targeted towards accidents and other issues around the West African bloc. And this is something because they have a broader view of what happens in that bloc, and they will be able to do a whole lot more. I believe that a lot of investors will be keeping that space watched, and it will help to boost insurance across the West African markets going forward.
I agree with you. We have a whole lot to do with ECOWAS, but that's a story for another day, by the way. Thank you, Tempo. Let's touch on the Southern African space very quickly, and the GSE's massive decline yesterday, nearly 1.8%, which caught everybody's attention. And of course, even the Rand was pressured because the IMF cuts the Africa's most advanced economy cuts its forecasts very sharply down. But good news this morning was that the number of fatalities from COVID-19 in South Africa seemed to be peaking, according to Bloomberg Television early today. And the number of infestations also seemed to be slowing down a little bit. We can use every good news here. And South Africa is also coming up with something very innovative, 1.1 billion rand, about 1.2 billion rand for what they call a tourism equity fund. The whole idea is to help the ailing industry, in particular Black business owners who are in the tourism industry, so that to prevent a total collapse. That fund was floated yesterday, and we think a thumbs up here for the authorities in Pretoria. And Life Healthcare says its first quarter 2021 revenue will be up 5%. Lucara Diamonds in Botswana said they found another white gem, 378,000 in the Botswana mine. That's good news. But diamond sales is coming back gradually after the ultra wealthy last year shunned the gem. And MedTech in Zimbabwe says talks is still ongoing to transform into an investment holdco. Ali, let me start with you on the Southern African space in terms of the virus and the impact on the economy with the IMF latest growth forecast revision.
So just to start with the virus, of course, we had this extraordinary parabolic surge in numbers in South Africa. It then spilled over into likes of Zimbabwe, Malawi. But we've seen in the last, I would say, 10 days, a sharp I saw test positivity is now in around 15%, daily cases down to about 7,000. So significant improvement. And the folks I follow in South Africa seem to be taking some comfort from those numbers. So that's the positive side, because there were tremendous worries about the mutant, the South African version of the mutant virus. In terms of the South African markets, we've seen the Rand sell off a little bit. Risk appetite has sort of ebbed in the last 48 hours, 2-3 sessions. And we saw the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which tends to follow the coattails of the US markets. Those came off yesterday. That put pressure on South Africa as well. With respect to the IMF, the IMF has South Africa growing this year, which is positive, but basically downshifted the outlook. I think it's going to be a very tough year. And your tourism story, where the government is putting together 1 billion rand, speaks to it. I was looking at the tourism numbers. They're like down 88% or something year on year. So, this is a major industry for South Africa. So it's going to be tough, I think, for those folks down there. We'll have to keep an eye out on things. But, this is also one of the most advanced economies on the continent. And, once the global environment improves, it's going to be the first place people will be looking for a recovery.
Yes, I think I know. There's a whole lot of what you call the underbelly there for South Africa, what works for the country. But again, there's a whole lot of problem there with the structure of the economy, even before the pandemic. Temple, the life healthcare story from Southern Africa, this company is on our radar. Again, I'm bringing this up because we have in Nigeria an unlisted pharmaceutical company called Emzor Pharmaceutical that is now gone to the market to do a bond. This was quite a significant development for me when I grabbed that on the wire.
You know, there's something Bill Gates said yesterday about Nigeria, and it relates, I may be wrong in quoting him right now, but it relates to the healthcare sector. He's saying it is important to actually fix the healthcare sector in Nigeria than to be purchasing the COVID-19 vaccines, you know, which at the end of the day, we may not even have ample facilities to be able to store.
True.
Now, we are far, far behind in Nigeria when it comes to healthcare. And that is one of the reasons why our human capital indices has always been shrinking. All along, it hasn't been favorable for us because we do not take healthcare and education very, very seriously. Healthcare, in terms of what South Africa is looking at, yes, they're expecting revenue to rise by 5%, and that is going to be positive because again, you know that the mining firms in that country are now ramping up support for how to get vaccine. So that is an area where you're going to be seeing a whole lot of liquidity. You're going to be seeing a whole lot of activities at this point in time. You will see funds being pushed in that direction. They are more serious. Their economy is more structured than Nigeria when it comes to different sectors of the economy. And so you should expect them to be able to aggregate whatever funding goes to the healthcare sector of that economy. Coming back to the point of Emzor that you actually raised, I mean, this is a company that had done private placement back in the days, and everyone had been expecting them to come to the market. You and I, Bosun, we've talked about this a couple of times, I mean, several times on different shows, you know, about Emzor. You know, everybody consumes paracetamol. And the first product of paracetamol in Nigeria is Emzor. It's the cheapest. It's the most widely available in the Nigerian market. So why won't that woman bring this a particular company to the market? You know, I think she's weary or she's worried rather about the pressure from shareholders. But we should also note that the shareholding structure in Nigeria is changing. The crop of shareholders that we also have in Nigeria they're beginning to see things differently. And I think at the end of the day, we will have Emzor in the Nigerian capital market. This bonds that they're raising is a good step in the right direction. I can bet that any day at a time. And I do hope we'll see more of this because it speaks to sustainability of companies.
I think it also speaks to the focus of the central bank and the Nigerian authorities now focusing on indigenous research and development, which the central bank spoke about extensively in April at the outset of this pandemic within the local economy, supporting R&D, putting that 100 billion naira out there for the private sector. And again, with the single digits in the treasuries market now for government borrowings, I think a whole lot of companies are now going through the commercial papers and the bond market, which is one good thing that the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, and the Debt Management Office had always wanted to achieve. So I'd allow more private sector to raise a fund at a lower level of the interest rate curve, and that will help boost the economy. If Emzor Pharmaceuticals, like I said, they get this money, they'll build new production lines and what have you. That is more jobs being created at the private sector level. That is more wealth creation. That's a whole lot more taking crime off the streets. And I think this is one good news we all can use. Thank you, Tempo. On the final notes on within the North African space, there's a whole lot of corporate news as well. From the Attijari Bank, its net banking income up about 1% in the fourth quarter of last year. Egypt is reopening one LNG plant because they're pushing to boost exports. Egypt is not giving up on a whole lot of things. They just released their periodic market indices review for January as well. That is also on the line, but the market is closed today to mark what to call the Police Day revolution. Ali.
Firstly, let me comment on that conjunction of the revolution and the police day. But of course, I think it was nearly 10 years ago that we had the revolution, and then subsequently, the situation was stabilized under President Al-Sisi. From an economic point of view, they've done a lot right in that 10-year period, not least of which was allowing the currency to find its own level. And that correct pricing of the currency brought in a lot of FDI, and it remains one of the favorite destinations for carry traders, although the rates have become more compressed because as interest rates went close to zero in the US. The LNG plant, again, that's a positive story. There's a lot of gas that they've found. They're looking to do the value addition. It's a joined up thinking on the part of the Egyptian government, as we previously noted. And then finally, just to touch on the Attijari Bank, that's a very strong, diversified bank, and that's pretty good performance in the context of the last year. So I would commend people to keep an eye on that bank because they've made great strides in the last few years.
Quite an interesting a package you've given us there for the North Africa. It's just a little bit that there are other revolutions being observed just a few days ago in neighboring countries. I think that will be Tunisia also, and there's a whole lot of fighting and unrest there and all of that. But again, they're putting it all in context some other time. Thank you so much, my panelists this morning. Ali Kansacho, we appreciate your time from Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi. Have a profitable day. And Temple Ashaju, we also appreciate your being on the show this morning from Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Let's come back together tomorrow at the same time to continue from here. Bye for now.